I think Restoration Shamans are going to be significantly better than most people realize or think they're going to be in a couple of days when 10.0.7 goes live. There was quite a bit of hype momentarily around Resto Shamans right after 10.0.5 hit. If memory serves, one of the last changes to get added before, or changes to be made before 10.0.5 hit, was the enormous buff to acid rain damage. At the time, people were talking about how acid rain damage and healing rain would be now worth pressing just for damage, particularly in Mythic Plus. But then once the patch actually went live and a couple of the biggest streamers and some of the top Resto Shaman players did some runs in Mythic Plus, and people started seeing 40, 50, 60k DPS overall in keys, the Resto Shaman hype really kind of amped up for a little bit. It was fairly short-lived, because it was barely apparent that Resto Shaman damage was excellent, but its healing wasn't in a fantastic state, especially in the higher up keys, lacking an external cooldown, not having any particularly strong rotational healing, like AoE healing outside of cooldowns. Handicapped Resto Shamans, in my opinion. Now, when 10.0.7 was first announced, we got a set of patch notes that looks like this. And this was the big rearrangement idea that Blizzard had. They were moving or juggling around a lot of talents on the talent tree, as well as making some, I guess you would say, efficiency changes. A few of the talents were just going to get baked into baseline abilities or become baseline abilities for Resto Shamans. Some talent bloat would be taken away, some points would be moved around, and that's what this looked like early on. Now, since then, I think all of the talent position adjustments got scrapped, but the changes that were baking things into abilities stayed. Things like lightning bolt damage, the talents and the chain lightning damage, talent was just getting baked into those abilities and the talents removed. Same thing with the resurgence talent on water shield. Now, as of a couple of days ago, we got some more changes that kind of, I guess, snuck in under the radar. The main one being the Earth Shield buff. The official patch notes have now been released, and in those patch notes, we got a couple of extra or differently worded lines that weren't in the previous round of blue posts for 10.0.7. Earth Shield healing increased by 60%. Now this is for the class Shaman, so this is all specs get a fairly big buff to Earth Shield. This is along with the talent change that makes Earth Shield apply a 6% damage reduction, as well as the other nice changes that go along with it, like Poison Cleansing Totem now removing all poisons instead of one, so you can now play it in Algathar Academy and effectively dispel the Lasher debuffs, the Astral Shift buff, increasing its duration by 50%, and the Swirling Currents redesign. Instead of dropping a Healing Stream Totem or a Cloudburst Totem and having it buff your next 3 Riptides, Healing Surges, or Healing Waves, it's now a 2-point node that just buffs your Healing Stream Totem or Cloudburst Totem. There are quite a few changes here for Resto. I don't want to go through all of them, but there is an 8% overall healing buff, as well as a bug fix and a buff to Ancestral Awakening and Earth Living Weapon, as well as the new talent getting added for Chain Heal, which is going to increase the jump distance. If you take the 2 points every 8 seconds, you'll double the jump distance on your next Chain Heal and reduce the cast time by 50%. This was a change, actually those 2 changes were something I've suggested or asked for in a previous video. Specifically, the Earth Shield getting a permanent damage reduction attached to it. I think at the time, this is probably a couple of months ago now, I was hoping for 6 or 8%, so I'm pretty happy with 6. I think it's going to be an excellent change. And Chain Heal being a button that can be usable in more situations. So a button that you can rely on for loosely spread healing rather than tightly stacked healing. So I think both of those changes, along with an 8% overall healing buff, a fairly hefty Earth Shield buff, and so on, I think that's going to make Resto Shaman's healing toolkit quite strong. Now, the way most Shamans have been playing at the moment is leaning heavily into their damage. I'm talking about Mythic Plus. So at the moment, most Mythic Plus Resto Shamans have a build that looks something like this. As I said before, the hype around Resto Shamans in 10.0.5 was that their damage was excellent, but it was their healing toolkit that was kind of holding them back. I think a big part of that was that they had to fairly significantly invest in damage talents to make their damage good. They had to take Acid Rain, they had to take Stormkeeper, they had to take Call of Thunder, they had to take the Lightning Bolt nodes over here, they had to take Lava Surge. Obviously you need Echo of Elements. You have to take Chain Lightning, obviously. You have to take all of these talents to make your damage formidable, to maximize it. What that means is in a build like this, you are giving up quite a few very strong healing talents. Things like Flash Flood, not being able to take Torrent to increase your initial Riptide healing, not being able to extend the duration of your Riptides, not being able to give your chain heals extra buffs, or really take High Tide. I know some shamans will swap Primal Tidal Core for High Tide for specific keys, but they still don't take the other chain heal nodes. They also can't take things like Earth Living Weapon or the Undercurrent buff that just buffs all healing based on how many Riptides you have out, to then get down to deeply rooted elements. Also can't fully invest in Primordial Wave, can't really take Healing Stream Totem or Cloudburst Totem duration, can't take buffs to their Earth Shield or their mobility from Spirit Wolf or Gust of Wind. There are just so many great points on the Shaman trees, class and spec, that Shaman you just can't really take right now unless you want to give up a significant portion of your damage. Now, the big changes in my mind coming in 10.0.7 is that choice no longer exists. Most of these damage buffs that we currently get from talents are just being baked into the abilities. Not having to come down and get improved Lightning Bolt, not having to grab Call of Thunder, not having to grab Resurgence, arguably not even really having to come down and grab Primordial Wave, because you will now have a means of getting some serious non-stacked throughput out through Chain Heal. So I think what people are going to be surprised by is how much damage Shamans or Resto Shamans are going to be able to do in keys while effectively building a full healing talent build. I also think that all healers walk a somewhat fine line between healing and damage. I think Restoration Druids do a very good job of showcasing this. Whenever Resto Druid healing over time effects, just their pure hots, are very strong, they end up doing a lot more damage because they have a lot more free globals to do damage. So in Resto Druid's case in particular, a healing buff actually also does a good job of giving them a damage buff in practicality. I think Resto Shamans are quite similar. This is also why I think the Earth Shield buff in particular is bigger than most people like to think about it as, because most people, they think, 60% of nothing is still nothing. But with Earth Shield giving a permanent 6% DR and doing non-negligible healing, I'm not saying that you can just throw an Earth Shield on the tank and never heal the tank, but an Earth Shield permanently on the tank with a 6% damage reduction with some, non-trivial healing is going to free up a lot of globals over the course of a dungeon for Shamans to be able to just do more damage or use more of their utility or use more of their efficient healing or burst healing or whatever it is. It gives them more freedom with their globals. In 10.0.7, I think there will be quite a lot of flexibility, particularly in Mythic Plus or Shaman builds. I think we're going to start seeing Shamans being able to take Flash Flood, being able to take Chain Heal nodes and not have it not be just a straight up meme. Being able to even take something like Earth Living Weapon or Torrent to increase their Riptide upfront healing, while still having all of the damage that they currently spec for. The class tree is also going to be significantly more efficient. There are a couple of nodes that still did get juggled around here, and quite a few just got removed entirely and again baked into either baseline abilities or became baseline abilities. Resto Shamans will no longer have to go over to this weird right-hand side of the tree to get their Surging Shields talents to buff their shields. They should be able to spec fully into Nature's Guardian now. They can still bring Thunderstorm, which is one of the best stops in the game in Mythic Plus. Being able to knock up a pack of enemies every 25 seconds is insane. No longer having to spend 2 points on the Lightning Bolt damage nodes. Having Poison Cleansing Totem actually be an effective poison dispel. I think these are all changes that are quite small individually, but add up to quite a large buff overall for Resto Shamans. I expect, like I said at the very beginning, I expect Resto Shamans to kind of take some people by surprise. I expect them to do exceptional damage in Mythic Plus. I think Resto Shamans are probably going to do the most damage in Mythic Plus. Maybe Preservation Evokers keep up with them, but their damage is going to be excellent. And now I think for the first time in Dragonflight, I think their healing toolkit is actually going to be quite good too. What I used to point to as the major failing or weakness of Resto Shamans in keys in particular was their lack of an external and their lacking rotational AoE throughput. The cooldowns Resto Shaman has, especially for group healing, have always, for all of Dragonflight, have been excellent. AG, Ascendance, and now recently in 10.0.5, the Healing Tide Totem buff. Being able to cycle or combine those together I think Resto Shamans in cooldowns have some of the highest throughput in the game in Mythic Plus, and I think the major weakness was that without those cooldowns, their AoE healing, particularly spread healing, was quite lacking. I think the chain heal buffs are going to really go a long way to shoring up that weakness. Let me know what you think, particularly if you disagree. I am planning on and looking forward to playing Resto Shaman quite a bit next patch, so I'm interested to hear if other people are planning on doing the same. Thank you for watching, and algorithm stuff.